When will Russia start this Gog Magog war? When is this Russian Empire, who also rallies a mighty alliance of nations? The Bible refers to them as a vast horde. Well, there are many nations that are going to be a part of that invasion upon Israel, and I'll not take the time to define that in this study. I will in the study on Gog and Magog, the two Gog and Magog wars. But it's going to be obviously all of the Muslim nations in that region. They're oftentimes called the Stan nations because almost all of those nations end with the spelling of S-T-A-N, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and so on. There's a whole group of Islamic nations. And what do all of those nations have in common? It's Islam and a hatred for Israel and for the Jews. But it's also going to involve parts of Africa and Libya. It's going to probably involve Germany. It's probably going to involve the Sudan and a vast horde. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I promised I wouldn't identify all of those nations in this study. I'll come back to that at a later time. But we know now that Ezekiel's prophecy that Gog, the prince of the north, the prince of Rosh or Russia, will not be content when he rebuilds the Russian Empire. He will rebuild the Russian Empire, and then God said, and I read it to you in those first verses, God said, I'm going to put a hook in the jaw of this leader, and I'm going to lead him into this invasion. The prophet Ezekiel even revealed the northern prince, the prince of Rosh, Gog's motivation for invading Israel. It was a twofold motivation. Number one is anti-Semitism. He hates the Jews. Whoever the prince of the north is, whoever the prince of Rosh is, whoever the leader of Russia is at this time, whether it's Vladimir Putin or will become someone else. As I've stated, there's intelligence that's being tossed around. This is only hours old, so whether it will be verified or not, I don't know. But there is intelligence that came out today that Vladimir Putin is suffering from a brain tumor, and some of his aggression and some of his activities, like Hitler, may be coming from a man who's not in his right mind. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate on that. But it's obvious that Vladimir Putin, as a leader of Russia, despises Israel and despises the Jews. Here's a little piece of the puzzle that you may not know. Did you know that the president of Ukraine is Jewish? The president of Ukraine is a Jew. And this probably does not help his cause with Vladimir Putin. And so Ezekiel tells us the two motives. Number one is anti-Semitism. He hates Israel and he hates the Jews. And the second is greed. He simply wants to take over the land of Israel and plunder all of the wealth of the nation. Ezekiel 38 verses 10 and 12. Ezekiel 38 verses 10 and 12. This is what the sovereign Lord says. At that time, evil thoughts will come to your mind, and you will devise a wicked scheme. You will say Israel is an unprotected land filled with unwalled villages. I will march against her and destroy these people who live in such confidence. I will go to those formerly desolate cities that are now filled with people who have returned from exile in many nations. I will capture vast amounts of plunder, for the people are rich with livestock and other possessions now. They think the whole world revolves around him. Now again, the timing of the Gog-Magog war is debated in circles of theology. But we can almost place the weight of scholarship that the first Gog-Magog war, prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39, will happen after the rapture or sometime during the first half of the tribulation. And there are those that argue that it'll happen immediately after the rapture. There are some who argue that it'll happen just prior to the arrival of the Antichrist becoming God in the first 3.5 years when he betrays and breaks his peace treaty with Israel. We'll not get into all the facets of that debate here.